Before we get started, we just want to let you know about a few ways you can support our grassroots indie show. You can follow us on social media at No Bad Reviews Pod. We'd love it if you could go to your favorite podcasting app and rate us and review us. Also, please tell a friend about our podcast. And last, you can financially support us on patreon.com/nobadreviews, buymeacoffee.com/nobadreviewspod, and you can buy merch at our website, nobadreviewspodcast.com. Thank you, and enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to No Bad Reviews, a coffee podcast. This is a podcast where three friends, coworkers, and coffee industry professionals get together every other week and pretend like we're experts. I'm Jenny, and I run the operations at a coffee company called Modest Coffee.
I'm Marcus, and I am your podcast attendant. Not the pilot, but the attendant today for today's episode.
Good. When people want drinks, they just need to ask you. Just flag you down as you're passing them by.
Is
Correct.
there a button I could push to call you for a drink?
I'll have to add that in post. Maybe a little.
Look,
Ding!
you can just text Marcus at the Modest Coffee phone number and tell him when you want a drink, and he'll bring it right over to your house.
I'm Stephanie. I'm somehow the employee of the month at Modest Coffee, even though I took 3 weeks off this month.
Yes.
That's great.
No, I'm the employee this month. I'm sorry.
You think so?
Yeah.
I thought Steph earned it just for showing up.
I mean, I came back.
You
didn't
haven't
I?
come back yet.
That's automatically.
You're still gone.
I'll be there Monday.
You know,
Will you?
Well,
I don't know.
as long
We'll
as
see how you treat me today.
you're here at the end of the month, I think you still, that's your department.
Sorry,
so
I'm still
I think you
feeling-
still get to decide.
Steph, I'm sorry I'm still a little resentful. Not at you, just at my life. And you just happen to be the one I'm directing it at.
When you're the only employee, sometimes you take the brunt of things.
I have to keep reminding myself, friends first.
Friends first, Jenny.
All right, let's get into this because we got to go to my mom's house. Birthday celebrations.
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah, well, first I want to just do a quick clarification. I know that we're not trying to do long clarifications, but just a quick one on the Snoop Dogg episode.
Yes.
Our friend Brian basically says that Easy Motherfucking E is dead.
Okay.
He passed away of AIDS in 96. So he's been dead a while, and it wasn't Suge Knight that we know of.
All right. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not
I
at
feel
all.
bad that we were joking about Eazy-E without realizing that he was dead. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. R.I.P. Eazy-E.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved all those letters. Thanks, Brian, for reaching out and letting us know.
Yeah.
That's great. So today's episode, this is the Jack Daniel's Nearest Green story, which is really
I'm
interesting.
excited.
You know, I mean, nothing says Murica like Tennessee whiskey and slavery.
Oh, that encapsulates a lot of American history.
So the only reason why we even really know this story of Jack Daniel's and Nearest Green is this woman, Fawn Weaver. She owns the Uncle Nearest whiskey company now, and she's an author, and she kind of uncovered all of this history. Nearest Green is the one who actually taught Jack Daniel's how to distill whiskey, and then Jack Daniel's became this big, huge company. So Nearest Green, Uncle Nearest, was kind of written out of the story.
The history of Jack Daniel's.
Right. But not... It wasn't like he was written out from the beginning. He actually wasn't written out until much later in Jack Daniel's history in 1969. The Jack Daniel's company was family owned until 1956, and then in 1956 it was bought out by Brown-Forman. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a huge, giant global company. I don't know if it was at the time, but maybe it was. I guess actually all of the major whiskey brands in the United States are owned by just 5 gigantic multi-global corporations.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was bought by this giant company in 1956, and then in the 1969 is when he was kind of written out of the history. And so I don't think it was like an overtly racist decision, but I think it was like, how do we want to
Subtly
market ourselves?
racist.
Subtly racist, because they're like, how do we want to market ourselves? They knew who their target was, Southern white men, and they just wanted to lean into that. And so they kind of just wrote Nearest Green out of the history.
Wow.
And so for the 150th anniversary of Jack Daniels was 2015. So this is way before everything that's happened more recently. They wanted to embrace their history, embrace their diversity of their history. And so they decided to bring Nearest Green back into their story.
Like a character.
Well, not so, just, I mean, like,
it's like, oh, we've got this history that we wrote out, and now we want to capitalize on it. It feels a little bit like, so we've got, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't feel genuine to be like, this is our history. I don't know.
I think that
It feels weird.
From reading on the Jack Daniels website and from listening to Fawn Weaver and from just through this research, it didn't seem like it was something nefarious. It seemed like they were really just trying to be. I mean, it could have been a marketing, but I don't think that maybe they were sitting in a boardroom like, we need to attract more liberals and black people. Maybe, I don't know, but it seemed like.
Are you saying that the big company did the right thing?
I mean,
For the right reason.
I can't say why they did it because I didn't find the exact reasoning, but they went through a lot of effort.
Fascinating.
And they actually got a lot of blowback for doing this, which is really interesting. If anything, it maybe hurt them to release this information. So 2015, 150th anniversary of Jack Daniels, the publicist reaches out to a New York Times reporter, this guy who's super into whiskey, Clay Risen. So they reach out to this guy, Clay Risen, and they're like, hey, we have this story we would like to put out. And so Clay does some research, but, he's a reporter. He's got deadlines. He's got to get these stories out. He can't do a complete investigative story. So he kind of just talks like high level about Nearest and about whiskey and about the history of the Jack Daniels Company, brings Nearest Green back into this story. And then Fawn Weaver, she was writing a book about the secrets to happy marriages. So she's traveling globally, interviewing people who've been married for 25 years or more, the happiest couples that have been married for 25 years or more, which I think is a really cute premise because she's got this great relationship with her husband. She started a blog. Her blog was really successful. She started this like online community, and then, she was approached to write a book. So she's in Singapore, and she happens to get a copy of the New York Times, and she sees this headline, which is, a story, but what really caught her attention was in the middle of the photo from the early 1900s is a black man sitting right next to Jack Daniel. And she's like, wow, this is really striking that this is the South, small town Tennessee. There's this black man featured so prominently in the middle of the photograph with these other employees right next to Jack Daniels. She's like, I have to know who this black man is, and I have to know more about it. And the black man in that photo was George Green, the son of Nearest Green. And so this kind of just piqued her interest, and she kind of obsessively started researching, and she's like, I have to know more. So she goes to her husband. She says, I'd love to travel to Lynchburg, Tennessee. And he's like, fuck no, I'm never going to they're a black couple. He's like, fuck no, I'm not going to a town named Lynchburg, Tennessee.
Right.
Black couple from California, born and raised in California. So for her 40th birthday, she's like, hey, I'd really love to do this thing for my 40th birthday. And so they travel to Lynchburg, Tennessee, so she could just start learning some more. And she ends up buying the farm while they're there.
That's a nice birthday present.
So this is where we are now. Fawn Weaver is in Lynchburg, where Nearest Green and Jack Daniels started, determined to find out more, and buys a farm. I'd like to say her husband is an executive at Sony Pictures.
Are they still happily married after she did all this?
They are still actually very happily married.
Yeah.
He's on the board for Nearest Green.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're great.
Did you look him up on LinkedIn too?
I did.
Nice.
You know how I spy.
Nice.
And I just want to say that Fawn's research was conducted over multiple years, involving 2,500 historians, archaeologists, records keepers, going through library, and across the United States, multiple states of records. So she really worked hard to compile all of this information and to verify the accounts of this story. So back in the day, Jack Daniel, he was born. Did you guys know that? He was born. He's the descendants of Scottish and Welsh family members. Like his grandparents had come over, settled in Tennessee.
From a strong distilling family?
I think it's in his blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't know it, but it was in his blood.
Oh, sure.
And so his mother actually died shortly after she gave birth to him. But his dad ended up remarrying this like terrible woman that Jack hated. So when Jack was a wee young lad, I mean, 1955, he went over to so what would he have been?
Seven at
Seven?
most.
1955?
1855, so this is why the 150th anniversary, this is where they consider the
sure.
start. At this neighboring farm, there was this guy named Dan Call. He was a pastor and a distiller. He had a huge, like 300-acre farm right outside of Lynchburg, Tennessee. And on one side was his church, and all the way on the other side where he couldn't see it was the distillery. And then he kind of lived in the between the two. So he kind of had these two sides of his life completely separate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good and evil.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And he's like, well, one doesn't exist if I can't see it. So on this farm, he was not a slave owner. I don't know if that was out of religious reasons
Or if it was post-Civil War.
it was pre. It was 1950 or 1855. So
it was
Dan
the
Call,
1860s, right? Was the Civil War.
yeah, that ended like 1865, I think, 1867. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Somebody, myself, I should go back and listen to the Juneteenth episode. If anybody's curious, go back a year. We've got an episode for you. So anyways, still slavery times. Some say it could have been because when you own slaves, you have to pay taxes on them because they're technically property.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I
it's so
didn't know
fucked
that.
up. So we don't know. He could have been a pastor and morally against owning slaves. It could have been a financial decision, but he did rent slaves to help in his distillery. So he would rent them from a neighboring
Well, that's
slave
fine,
owner.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
then. Jeez.
So kind of like a can I borrow your tool?
Yes,
I
Yeah.
didn't know that was
in a terrible way.
thing.
Wow.
Isn't that terrible? I mean, I guess
Wow.
it makes sense, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's awful. Let me rent your, yeah, like a tool. That's terrible.
Hey, you're not using them. They're just standing around. Fuck.
I know, right?
Horrible.
I know.
Crazy.
Well, and the fucked up thing is, he's still got to pay for it, pay for the use of that
Disgusting.
person's work. So it's like, why not? Anyways,
Right.
Sorry.
Whatever.
Anyways.
whatever. This is, we have to think this is a different time. It's not right, but it is what it is. And so Nearest was the slave that he rented from this local guy. Local guy's last name was Green. That's how Nearest got the last name Green. And Nearest somehow was a master distiller. He was so good at it. So this guy, Dan Call, just had Nearest basically living on his farm and doing all the distilling. And so Jack Daniel comes over as a wee young lad and just moves on to Dan Call's farm and also works is working on the farm, finds he is super fascinated by the distillery. So Dan lets him be Nearest Green's assistant.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Nearest Green and Jack Daniel and whatever slaves were on the farm doing all the distilling all work side by side. So Jack Daniel was basically working just as the slaves beside him were. He also wasn't getting paid. He was getting room and board just to live
He was
there.
like so little though.
I
Like,
know. Isn't that crazy? So he was essentially raised by Nearest Green.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So going back to the things that people were saying after this New York Times article, like Jack Daniel wasn't even old enough to own slaves while slavery was even a thing.
Right,
So
right.
that's like impossible. And I think Nearest was more like a father figure to him because Nearest was born in 1820. So he was, a much older guy, maybe around, what would that be? 20, 30s? In his 30s?
30 when Jack was born, yeah.
Yeah. So
35.
yeah, exactly. So Jack's working side by side with Nearest. He really respects him. He really looks up to him. He's super fascinated with the distilling. He's now grown up with distilling. Then we have the Civil War. That all happens. I guess the distillery was selling or giving spirits away to the soldiers and everything else. Civil War ends. Slavery is now over. Nearest is now a free man. Dan called the pastor, his wife. I guess she was not cool with drinking. She was one of those early prohibitionists. So she's like, hey, look, you got to choose between me and the church or your distillery because, like, I don't want to put up with this anymore. So he chose the church and his wife, and he sold the distillery to Jack Daniel.
Now, where did Jack Daniel get any money?
No idea.
Maybe it was a rent to own.
It
type
could be
thing.
like a rent to own. I didn't
You
really
know?
find that information. They just said maybe he was getting a small stipend while he was working on the farm. It could have been.
I mean, I know he like moved away from his dad, but maybe there was family money that he had access to also.
It's a possibility.
Right.
I think it was my opinion. It was probably more of a rent to own
Yeah.
sort of situation.
Like, hey, you pay me this much, and then over
Right.
time, and then it's yours.
Yeah, exactly. Because you
Right.
figure this Dan Call was also like a pretty nice guy to them as well.
And that type of financing arrangement was not uncommon back in the day either, even now to a certain extent.
Plus, you figure Dan Call, I mean, he probably still was into the distilling. He's still
Right.
living on the property.
Right.
Like, nothing has changed except for, like, Dan Call's not making the money on the distilling anymore.
Well,
the money.
he is if Jack's paying him still. So,
Right.
like,
Right.
nothing changes except his wife has been calmed down about
Right.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, and then I guess you figure Jack Daniel, though, is now the one calling the shots. And so the first thing he does is he puts Nearest Green on the payroll as the head distiller. And they basically just work together until 1881, when Jack, I guess, now fully owns the distillery and has saved up enough money to move into a bigger location off of this farm, but nearby still. And at this time, Nearest is like ready to retire. But Nearest's 3 sons go to the new location and are like the master distillers now with Jack Daniel and like still working for the company. And in fact, the grandchildren ended up working for the Jack Daniel company as well.
Wow.
Holy shit.
The families were so close throughout generations. The kids grew up together, playing together. They would still have family dinners together, you know, like Sunday dinner. The whole 2 families would still get together and eat around the same table.
Oh, shit.
And in fact, when Fawn went to Lynchburg, all these generations are still there. Jack Daniel's descendants are still in Lynchburg. Nearest Green's descendants are still in Lynchburg. And so she met with one of Jack's descendants. And at first she was kind of wary of Fawn and what she was up to, you know, woman writing a book from California and all of this media storm against them. And so when Fawn was like, no, I think there's actually like a really beautiful story here that I would love to tell, she was like, all right, pulls out her phone, gives Fawn an entire list of Nearest descendants, names and numbers straight from her cell phone.
Oh, my God.
So even 150 years later, these families are still so close and in regular contact that they're like in each other's phones.
That's just how it is in small town Tennessee, though, too. They all know each other.
Everybody
Yeah,
knows
small
each
town.
other, but like this
Right.
lack of racism and this mutual love and respect for each other is really, I think, a special thing. I think it's a special thing to find between anybody,
Yeah.
between any 2 people. And so I guess the Jack Daniel company, the distillery, Jack Daniel himself, really took care of Nearest. He retired a rich man. He was one of the Nearest Green was one of the wealthiest men in Lynchburg of anybody, black or white.
Wow.
His sons were extremely wealthy from working with the Jack Daniel company. Generations of wealth throughout their family.
This is an amazing story. This is like really shocking.
I know.
I'm kind of tearing up a little too.
I know.
This is crazy.
It's like this special story that you never expect to hear. Yeah, their family was just like really well respected. They were a very prominent family. Very involved in the community and accepted and well liked at a time when there was segregation in schools still.
Right.
And in fact, one thing I was listening to, when the schools segregated, I guess Fawn asked one of Nearest or Jack Daniel, one of the descendants, like, what was that like when the schools integrated? And then, you know, just tell me about that. And she's like, well, our kids were all still playing together outside before school, after school, weekends. Now they could play together at school during the day. She was like, it was great.
Yeah, that's great. So,
Wow.
So tell me about the Uncle Nearest company. So it's this writer lady. She buys the farm, and then does she? I thought it was owned by a descendant. Is this writer lady a descendant too? No. Okay.
No, the writer lady is not a descendant.
Did she like poach a distiller from the family?
Well, so one of Jack's descendants, so Jack actually never had any children. So the company passed on to his nephew. And so it was all like nephews and cousins and people, like it went through this other line of descendants. So none of these people are like Jack's great grandchildren, but they're like his great nieces and great nephews.
Okay.
One of his great nieces became the head of distilling and the master distiller at Jack Daniel's, even after Brown Forman bought it. She did that for like 30 years. She was the head until not that long ago. And so when Fawn goes to Lynchburg to really learn the story of Nearest Green, because she shows up at a library, and she's trying to like do some research. But despite the fact that the Green family was so prominent, there was still very little information on Nearest himself. So she doesn't immediately find any materials at the library. The librarian calls the director and is like, "Hey, I've got this woman from California here. Can you help?" And so he's like, "Oh, yeah, let me go and get this woman, one of Jack's descendants." And so he calls her, and she comes. This is the one who gave her all of Nearest's family members' information. So she shows up about 2 hours later. So she's in town. She's just gotten all this information. She's kind of formulating her plan, like, how do I want to approach this information? What am I going to do next? So this real estate agent, Sherry Moore, calls up Fawn and is like, "Hey, I just talked to my cousin. This property where all of this started is for sale. Would you like to go and take a look at it?"
Oh, that's cool.
No.
So Sherry takes him out to the farm to take a look at it. Immediately, within 5 minutes, Fawn and her husband felt this connection, and they had to buy it. So they buy this farm. Turns out Sherry Moore was the master distiller that had worked at Jack Daniel's. So she didn't know that at first. Fawn found this out later because Sherry said to her, "Hey, if you ever want to do some distilling and bring back, the name of Uncle Nearest, I will come out of retirement and be your distiller." Isn't this amazing?
So she's like a great niece
Yes.
of Jack Daniel.
So Sherry. So she did it for like 30 years. So she was retired by this point and doing real estate. So you figure she could have been 50 in 2015. I mean, I didn't have the date of when she left the Jack Daniel's Corporation, but yeah, like it could have been like 1970s, 1980s.
Are there any other people in this town? Like, what is I'm curious what the population of this town is. Like 37.
Yeah, right.
I've heard of Lynchburg. I'm sure it's bigger than that.
It's very small. It's about 6,600 people.
Okay.
And they're all descendants of Jack Daniel and Nearest Green.
Well, that might be small by your standards, but out there, that's a big, small city.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6,600. I mean, they got a downtown.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell you.
Probably a very adorable downtown.
I'm sure it is.
We got to go to Lynchburg.
Yeah.
You actually can go to Lynchburg. You can now get a tour of the Uncle Nearest. You can go somewhere nearby and get Jack Daniel's tour.
Oh, yeah. This says Shelbyville, Tennessee. So, that's just outside of Memphis.
Well, there's, I wanted to look into this, but I didn't. They actually are using somebody else's bourbon right now while their bourbon is aging.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But the person is like doing it to their standards of how they want it done.
Yeah,
So how much longer till we can actually drink theirs?
That's what I didn't find out.
Yeah, I know that there's like
So the one that they're using is
rules.
probably Shelbyville. I heard the figure 16 years
Okay.
is what it takes. So anyways, so the seed is planted by Sherry Moore, the master distiller for
Just
Jack Daniel.
Like an offhand comment, like.
But then on the front of the bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to jump ahead, but do you have anything about Edie Butler?
Okay, so we'll come back to that. So anyways, I just want to talk a little bit about Fawn really quickly. We know how she kind of ended up where she is. Who she is as a person, though, she has a pretty interesting story, too. She grew up in California. Her dad was a producer for Motown.
Oh.
Yeah, like worked with Smokey Robinson and the Supremes and everybody else. So she grew up in this family of there's celebrities everywhere. But her dad decided to become a pastor. When she was a child, like a conservative Christian pastor. So he stopped being the music producer for these people, but became their pastor. So they would still come into the house throughout her childhood looking for pastoral advice. Isn't that interesting? Or pastoral advice? The conservative nature of her parents, though, and now she's living in California, like LA area, did not jive with her. So she actually ran away from home when she was 15. Away / told her parents, "I'm out." Well, she didn't have anywhere to go. So she went to a homeless shelter and chose to live in homeless shelters and make her way on her own.
Oh, man, they must have been really fucking conservative.
Yeah, like conservative, like you have to wear long skirts conservative. Yeah.
Wow.
That's orthodox.
It was some sort of Christian. And So anyway, so she ended up in a shelter that was one of those work to get your own place type of shelters.
Cool.
So she worked, she turned in her paycheck, and they saved up all of her money for her to move on to the next place. She said it was one of the greatest experiences of her life because she finally had independence. She was working towards a goal. She felt supported in this environment, more supported as who she was as a person than she was in her own home. And then when she was 18, she got her own place. And
Wow, 18.
Yeah,
Cool.
I know. So she was interning at a PR firm, and these clients came in, and I guess at the time PR was a lot different than it is now. And she had this idea of doing this like full like brand integration, and rather than just paying for ads like on TV or whatever, paying to get your brands put into like TV shows and movies, which we see a lot now.
Yeah.
She was like early days of that, and there was a couple of clients who were really interested in doing that too. And so she's always had big ideas of being a business owner. So she was like, all right, this is great, because she had so many connections in the music and media industry. She was able to use her connections to get these her two clients put into these places, into movies, into music videos, into commercials and things. And she was really successful, but she kind of wanted to be bigger than she was. And so she brought all these people onto the payroll, and then with like grandiose ideas, and then it all fell apart financially. So then, she met her husband, Keith. It was the son of her hairdresser.
Oh.
And her hairdresser was like, I think you would love my son. And she's like, okay, this is fucking weird.
Such a cliche, isn't it?
I know.
That's adorable.
This is exactly how Marcus's sister met her husband, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's really cute.
that's true.
Except for it was the mom. It was Marcus's mom and her hairdresser. They schemed to bring them together.
Collaborated together.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
It is cute.
It is.
And then I just listened to another story recently on another podcast about two people who met in a barbershop. Love is in the salons, guys.
There you go.
If you're looking for love,
If you're looking for connection.
yeah, ask your hairdresser
just
to
tell
set you up.
Yeah, tell your hairdresser.
Awesome.
But yeah, so she agreed. She met Keith, and they hit it off, fell deeply in love. And so then they just had this great relationship where I think they had a relationship that she didn't have growing up, where he respected her as an individual, supported her in the things she wanted to do. And so she was like, wow, this is amazing. And so she started this blog. She wanted to find a million women who are in happy relationships like hers.
Good
happy
luck.
marriage. I know, right?
Just kidding.
Yeah.
I like you, Marcus.
Then did it come down to like one in each state? 50? Sure.
Well, I think it's funny because it's like, she says she loves love. She loves love. She loves respect. She loves these stories. It makes total sense given the story of why the story of Jack Daniels and Nearest Green connected.
Yeah.
It's totally like the same kind of stories that she's always been attracted to. Became an author, had a publisher and everything else who had her writing this book. So yeah, like I said, now we're back in Singapore. She's reading the New York Times. She's like, I'm just going to go to Lynchburg to write this book. Buys the farm, not because she wanted to start a distillery, but because she wanted to be fully immersed in the story of Jack Daniel and Nearest Green while she wrote this book. She wanted to be in the place where it started, which is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what a amazing, like just the privilege. I'm not saying she's privileged, but the opportunity, the position in life to be able to make that decision and go in all out like that.
Go buy a farm and then and then just meet everybody, and then now I'm sure she's like a billionaire too. So.
Well, I don't know. So we'll get to the business side of it later. I mean, things are going well, but they're not going easy.
Yeah.
Did she ever end up writing the book?
I don't know. She has not written the book. As far as I can tell.
Too busy making whiskey.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, I just, they're one of the fastest growing whiskey brands, if not the fastest growing whiskey brand in America right now.
Yeah, she's got some great business stuff that she's been working on that's really cool.
Fucking wild.
So she's in this community of Lynchburg. She and her husband have been fully welcomed into the community itself. They moved permanently from California to Lynchburg. Their friends and family back home were like, you guys are fucking crazy.
Right.
But they love it. They love the community. They love the people. She said it's so welcoming. She said, of course, there's like little bits of racism here and there, but overall she said it's a beautiful community of people, and that like they have been so like happy and accepted. She said people like in their helping her do this research have been so open, and so getting to starting Nearest Green, or Uncle Nearest, the whiskey brand. So she has this Sherry Moore who drops this comment to her, and then she was meeting with a large group of Nearest's descendants in Nashville. And so she gets together with them and she's like, like what would you like to see? Like, how would you like to see his legacy honored? And I guess she said she got the feeling that people had already been talking, about what they wanted. And they said, we'd love to see his name on a whiskey, and we'd love to see his name go out there. And they're like, we'd love to see you do it, because, you already own the farm. And she was like, I don't know about this. Because she's like, I'm an author. I'm writing a book. This is not the undertaking I'm here for.
Right.
But, this also plants another seed. She actually said that she grew up religiously. She's got this faith, and she has a prayer that she likes to say. And she's like, if this is an opportunity, like, God, this is an opportunity you want me to take, open the door. If this is not an opportunity, close the door so I can never think about it again. And so she seems to be one of those people who trusts that if there's an opportunity, it was put there for her to take advantage of. Which I think, I think a lot of people seek that through meditation, whether it's prayer or meditation or mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I know that I've kind of relied on that too. If this is meant to be, it'll be, sort of. It kind of harkens back to that phrase.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, there you go. Jesus, take the wheel. So she gets back in the car, and I think she has one of those moments where she's recognizing this is, why do these things keep popping up? So she calls Sherry and Moore and is like, hey, I think we should do this.
Oh, my God.
So at first what she thinks she wants to do is just do a commemorative release of whiskey, 500 bottles of Uncle Nearest, commemorative, just to honor him. But then she starts going into the business side of distilling, and there's a lot of laws, a lot of regulations around distilling and distribution. So like wineries, they can just make a bottle of wine and like give it out to whomever, right? You can kind of ship directly to stores, you can ship directly to consumers. Spirits are a lot more regulated, so you can't just be a small brand and send it off to your local liquor store. Liquor stores have to buy it from distributors. And we all know fucking distributors suck.
We've learned that.
We've learned this lesson. And distributors don't just pick up anybody. You can't just be like, hey, I got some alcohol to sell you. What do you think? They're like, go fucking show me.
Yeah.
Prove yourself. Mm-hmm. So you have to have like X amount to even be considered by a distributor. You have to have X amount of reserve of like, you can support so much demand. Mm-hmm. You also have to show them like a complete marketing plan. How are you going to show this to consumers? How are you going to sell it? Demos, advertising, like how much money are you putting into this? They want you have to sell them on why they should work with you and why that's going to be profitable to them to a certain amount. So she was like, goes and looks into it. By her estimations, to run this 500 bottle run of commemorative Uncle Nearest, it would cost them about $1 million.
Oh my God.
Isn't that insane?
Jeez.
What does that work out to per bottle?
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So she kind of is like, that's just not going to work. Uh-huh. But then, it's like she like can't shake this feeling that like this is the direction she needs to go. So then she just kind of decides to go all in. Why do a commemorative bottle? Like, let me start a fucking company.
Wow, it's crazy that that's the direction she went as opposed to fuck all this.
Yeah,
I know.
It's like, if I'm going to spend $1 million to do 500, I may as well spend $1 million to do everything. Right.
Basically, I think that's kind of where her mindset ended up. She was pretty discouraged, but then, it just came back around to like, hey, I got to do this thing. Wow. So she calls Sherry again and it's like, hey, if you do this to distilling, I'm going to raise the money and we're going to do this thing. And Sherry's like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Yeah. So she raises the funds. She gets, this woman is so connected. from her father and her husband being an exec, and probably her own personal connections as well. She's had no problem raising money. She raises $60 million.
Of course.
In investor money.
Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In small investments or from investment firms? What kind of?
She did not say exactly where she got the $60 million from. She did talk about in this podcast episode. Oh, let me mention these 2 podcasts really quick. Besides the New York Times article, I also listened to How I Built This with Guy Raz. You know Guy Raz.
Yeah.
That's a business podcast. He talked about how she built the business. I also listened to the Gastropod podcast. That talked a little bit more about the story behind it.
Dope.
More about her personal experience doing this research and getting to know the family members and more about the story there. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested, to read those 2 podcasts listen to those 2 podcast episodes.
Sure.
Anyway, so she gets all this money. They start doing it. They, like I said, they have to use somebody else's whiskey until their whiskey is completely ready to go. But we're talking, you're saying how they're one of the fastest growing whiskey brands. It's completely intentional on her part. So she has this background in PR. She kind of understands, from her early adulthood, she kind of understands hey, you got to get this out to people. People have to hear about you. People have to know about you. She's we got to generate our own buzz. So she hires some salespeople. They're going out to bars and stuff and selling this to people. She said one of her sales tactics was to go in there and be tell me which one of your whiskeys was not founded by a white man. And people would be well, none of them. She's well, here's this one. You're the first African-American, Black American, whiskey company ever.
Which is kind of crazy, right? Awesome.
So crazy, especially because slave labor was what built up so many of these companies.
Right. So many distillers were enslaved Black men, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and plus when you have a war chest of $60 million, you can pretty much do whatever the fuck you want for,
Well, she wanted to be really strategic about the money, too, because she didn't want to have to go back and ask money, so she didn't want to just throw money away.
That's a huge war chest to sort of, figure out, okay, it's going to take $1 million to get to scale. Now let's just sell it, right? There's just, it's a lot of confidence walking in of we can do whatever. We can scale.
Part of this money, too, though, is going into building a new distillery.
Sure.
A $50 million distillery facility is what they're working on right now. So
there you go.
They have a lot of money wrapped up in this, making this completely successful. She said what she wants. She said Jack Daniel's whiskey is such a well-known brand. Everybody knows. You could go anywhere. Everybody knows the name Jack Daniel's. She wants Nearest Green to be as ubiquitous with whiskey in American history as Jack Daniel is. And so she's the only way to do that is at a gigantic scale. And so she's we're going to do this.
It's crazy.
Yes. Wow. She wants to be as big as Jack Daniel's with Uncle Nearest's name on that bottle.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So she's got these salespeople going out. She also entered herself into every single competition that she could. She said out of 16 competitions, they won the top prize for 13 of them.
God damn.
And then got silver or bronze for the other 3.
That's dope.
Amazing. So she's got this huge buzz just in the whiskey world.
Yeah.
But
good product.
Right. But the stores don't necessarily know. The stores aren't always following these competitions. Store owners, you think the manager at Benny's gives a shit?
Everybody's an award winner. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So the next thing she did was, so they only had so much run on this. And so they went and they distributed it. Well, what she did when it started selling out through the distributor while they were getting together another order, she ran a bunch of ads about Uncle Nearest so that people, regular people, would go to the store looking to buy and try Uncle Nearest, show up at your local Benny's, and they're oh, we're sold out. So she's you have all of these people coming in and talking to the store people saying, I want this Uncle Nearest. Yeah. Then these store managers and employees have to take notice that it's sold out. Because now they're having to search for it and look in the computer where is it? Do we have any in stock?
Right.
And so then when it comes in stock, then they're well, all these people have been asking for Uncle Nearest. I better buy a bunch of it. Smart fucking woman.
Yeah.
She calls it scarcity marketing.
God damn it. There's a name for it.
Yeah. It's
Great.
really smart. She's super smart. She's so brilliant and so passionate. And so, like, the next thing she had to do, this is an interesting little aside, when she was... So she starts Uncle Nearest, does it very quietly, gets everything trademarked, gets everything for her business in place. But then she has to give the Jack Daniels company a heads up of what she's doing, because because Nearest Green is now a part of the Jack Daniels story at this point, because they had released that information now 2015-ish.
Oh.
And now it's a part of their branding, Uncle Nearest. So she goes to the president of Jack Daniels, says to him, hey, I'm starting a whiskey company called Uncle Nearest. I already have the trademarks. I already have everything in place, and we're about to start production. And she said he did not see that coming, and it, like, floored him and blew him away. And she said this was a really scary moment because they could have destroyed everything that she had worked for legally with trademarks and everything else. And she's like, I would have won, but they would have decimated me financially. And she's like, I don't know that it would have been worth it at that point to go and spend all of my investors' money on legal fees.
Right.
And so after some, like, legal haranguing and going back and forth, in the end, she was allowed to use the Uncle Nearest name. She was allowed to build a company for Uncle Nearest, but she was not allowed to build it using the name of Jack Daniels. So she can use Jack Daniel in her story, but only if it's historically a part of the historical factualness of her story, and if it's, like, in the media. So it's, like, mentioned a little bit on their website, but it's all about this, has to be about the story of Uncle Nearest. It can't be, well, this guy, can't be based
defamatory.
on. Right. Well, it's not even defamatory. It's basically like what Jack Daniels company doesn't want is for them to be building their brand saying we're basically, like, alluding to the fact that they're the same as Jack Daniels.
Right.
Like, this
Oh,
company taught Jack Daniels how to distill, so therefore we have, a product that's just as good as Jack Daniels.
Oh, I see.
You get it?
Yeah.
So they had to tread very lightly, and they still have to tread really lightly, because at any point in time, Jack Daniels can come in and be like, hey, we have a trademark issue with you guys.
Yeah.
Until her company is built up enough to stand on its own.
They're probably just gonna buy her out.
No, she has no interest in being bought out. This is 100%. She wants a company that's going to outlive her. It's going to outlive everybody. She wants to, she wants to be Jack Daniels of, a Black American, the Black American Jack Daniels.
Go get him. That's great.
That's great. And so, you're talking about the master blender, being one of Nearest descendants. When she first started this project, she really wanted to have some of his family members involved in the process. She wanted them there. So the first podcast I listened to in 2019, none of them had taken her up on it. But I guess they had established some sort of fund for his descendants to help fund, like, if they wanted to go to school to learn master distilling, like, they would pay for it. The Uncle Nearest company would pay for it and support them. It sounds like she's finally got one of them to come around. She said that was the biggest thing, is she wanted Nearest Green's family involved in this company and doing the work that Uncle Nearest himself was doing. Cool. Yeah, it's really cool. Here we are. Now we have this company, and I think it's a really amazing and beautiful story. So happy, because so often these stories go sideways. But this is it's a super beautiful story. I really like it.
Well, shall we drink some whiskey?
Yeah, so Uncle Nearest hasn't made a coffee product yet.
Not yet. Not yet. So what we're going to have to do is try the Jack Daniels flavored coffee.
I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction right now.
Tastes like cherry.
Tastes like cherry.
Oh, that's funny.
This is probably roasted by some giant toll roaster who licenses the name Jack Daniels from the company.
Is it the same white company? And then I was going to say, if it is, we can just tell them to go check out the Jim Beam episode. And you'll learn all about the coffee company there.
Different. Jim Beam is Suntory, remember?
No, the roaster.
The roaster.
The white coffee company.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's one of those big roasteries that licenses the name and throws some cherry flavoring on it.
Okay. So,
can we just sit for a moment in this story?
It's a great story. It's a crazy story.
But I think that that's not uncommon, that, there would be white men working aside slaves back in the South, like poor white people, or maybe like young lads who ran away from home at 7.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So wild.
7 years old.
I mean, he just ran next door to the pastor's house.
And then the pastor's like, you know what? My rented, like, master distiller slave needs an assistant. So sure, I'm going to hire a 7-year-old that just showed the fuck up. Sure. Kind of like, what the fuck were they doing down there, at that time? Yeah, this makes sense. Sure.
Well, in the
Cool.
days before DCFS.
Hey, yeah, like, hey, pastor's wife, guess who just showed up? Guess what problem just got solved? Got a farmhand now, just showed up. How lucky are we? God bless us. Free labor.
It's great.
Great.
Ask and you shall receive.
Right.
But yeah, this is one of the most pleasant stories I think I've ever heard or researched. It's just, it kind of like restores my faith in 1860s humanity.
Yeah.
And humanity throughout it. I mean, there's so few beautiful stories like that.
It's great.
It's
Yeah.
really nice. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, shall we brew some coffee?
sure.
Okay.
Modest Coffee roasts the highest quality, single origin coffees without the snobbery. They take the guesswork out of buying specialty coffee by carefully curating green coffees and sorting them to one of their tiers based on cupping score, price, flavor notes, and roast level. Go to www.modest.coffee/no bad reviews to see what they're roasting today. Pip pip cheerio!
All right, we're back. So yeah, we were just briefly talking 2 seconds ago
Yeah.
about how, Fawn, our family was like, we really would love to see his name carried on. Fawn has the resources and the ability to do it, but Fawn doesn't want it to be her company. She wants to honor Nearest by having his descendants involved, and she doesn't want it to just be her company and, here's this woman from California making money on this
Right.
guy's story. She wants it to still be his story, which I think is really cool too.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool how she's like not only telling the story, but she's in a way like making this story happen too, or at least a key component. But the whole families and everybody and Jack Daniel's descendant coming together too to make this happen is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like one of the greatest stories. It's really hard to find people who are... So, like, here's Fawn. She's like a fucking doer. I mean, I've never heard of a doer like her. She's like, I don't want to live here when I'm 15. And
Right,
like,
right, yeah.
she's like, I'm going to go make it in... She's been making it on her own her entire life.
How old is she now?
45.
Wow.
So she's
cool.
45 now.
Okay.
But she's doing it the right way, in a way that feels very honest and like true. She's like, I don't think she's like, I need to be a millionaire. I need to have a bunch of money. She's not in this because she's trying to become rich. She's in it because she's
found the authenticity and she's gonna sell it.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's doing great. And so I guess her company, though, Uncle Nearest, is profitable. But
Oh, yeah.
they're at that point where they're reinvesting all of their profits back into the company because she does not want to keep going to the investors and asking for money. She wants to be self-sustaining. She wants this success to be the success of Uncle Nearest and
Fuck
of
yeah.
the company. So that,
dope.
I think, is great, too. Like, what a mindset we don't see.
Yeah. Because the only way that you keep going back to the well for more and more money, the only way out is like to sell it eventually. That's what investors want. They want their money back.
Ah, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
So the sooner you get to self-sufficiency and kind of everybody paid back, that's where you have a legacy brand and a legacy company that'll last, forever.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean,
as long as somebody doesn't run into the ground,
she definitely, like, I feel like her values in some ways, I mean, we're way tinier, but I feel like I can really relate and connect with her values and what she's trying to do and trying to do it the right way and not just trying to turn a profit and trying to reinvest her profits and become a self-sufficient, self-sustaining company that's just trying to do the right thing and not necessarily trying to get it right. She's got her story, she's got her mission, and it's about her product and the story of Uncle Nearest. It's not about, all of these other...
Her appetite for scale is bigger than ours.
Way bigger than ours. I don't actually want that kind of stress in my life. She seems to handle it very well. But maybe if we didn't have kids, the kids stress me out so much. I already have stress in my life. I don't need more stress.
Look.
I don't need to go to work to be stressed.
No,
I'm stressed at home.
I'm trying to stay aggressively small.
I'm trying to stay aggressively chill.
Yeah, so you guys want to do an olfactory reveal? Because it smells...
Yeah, it fucking smells like cherry almond in here big time.
No, I mean, it's like the ubiquitous alcohol, like cherry fake smell. This is familiar. You've tried this before.
I don't know if this needs to make it in, but somebody recently said Steph's kind of negative on the podcast. I thought you guys were a No Bad Reviews podcast.
What?
I am kind of negative on the
Nobody
podcast.
said that.
You're supposed to be No Bad Reviews.
True, I am.
Who said that?
I am more negative.
Which
than I'm
episode?
supposed to be.
I don't know.
Somebody
all
privately
of them.
message us?
Who was it? No, I was talking to somebody in person. Maybe it was... I don't remember who it was. Somebody
shit.
locally.
Because I'm always like, it's not good enough. I'm going to add whiskey. I'm going to add whiskey. I'm going to add this.
No, you have
I'm
to
just going to go straight to the whiskey.
You have to say what I
Just,
think
I'm
would
here
make this better
for the-
is whiskey. We all love whiskey.
Yeah. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, to really...
That is the point. This is a podcast where we challenge ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a challenging podcast.
So do you guys remember the little cigars, like this reminds me of like a...
Like cigarello or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh,
it
you're
was.
right.
Yeah.
like one of those scented flavored cigars, or cigarillos for doing...
Yeah.
Yeah, like doing Snoop Dogg episode.
Can I tell you about this coffee real quick? All right.
I mean, that's part of your job.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you about it real quick.
Right.
I didn't even have to do any research. It was roasted
right
and
there.
manufactured in the U.S. by World of Coffee in Sterling, New Jersey.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah.
World of Coffee.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah.
That was easy.
Great.
And this is interesting. This I don't think we had in the Jim Beam episode. Ingredients are Arabica coffee, 100%,
Cool.
natural and artificial flavors.
Yep.
And Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey.
Wow.
It has
they
whiskey
actually
in it.
add as an
Really?
ingredient. No shit.
But it does say it's non-alcoholic, so I don't know.
Denatured. Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe they missed it and then it, evaporates off.
Oh, that could be. Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Made with authentic Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey.
Huh.
Old number 7 brand.
Amazing. Well, let's try this. Unless it'll make you fall off. Does it count? No.
I don't
this is
think so.
not alcoholic.
I think it's been heated.
Okay.
It's probably it says non-alcoholic.
We're good.
I mean, I'm not looking forward to it, but I think I'll be all right. Like looking forward to confronting that. That's what I'm saying.
cups.
Oh, we're using the baby cups.
Well, we could use baby cups.
Oh my God, these are the cutest tiny little Melita mugs that you found.
So when I listened back to our Melita episode where I could not stop going on and on about eBay and the cute little vintage Melita stuff, I went back on eBay again after buying that coffee maker and then found these cute little Melita mugs.
Oh my God, they're
Were these
adorable.
like promotional for something cute? I don't feel like these are practical at all.
I have no idea. All I know is I got a set of 4 really cute little Melita mugs.
So cute. They're
They're like perfect.
ceramic, tiny little mugs though.
Well, I feel like
Like
they're
espresso. Maybe it's for espresso.
maybe.
They're like slightly bigger than espresso though, just a little.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Melita doesn't do espresso. They're about pour over.
Right. But it's not a meaningful amount of coffee.
Maybe the idea is that you should drink it and always have a hot cup of coffee. So
like-
if you drink through a small amount, then a small amount, and so on.
Yeah.
3
And
ounces? 4
These are
ounces?
vintage though, These were like a coffee. This was a cup of coffee back then.
People's hands
Yeah.
were
Coffee
so
was
tiny
really
back then.
expensive. 10 drops.
Just 10 drops.
Yeah, I mean that's like a full fucking cup here with one of these. Anyways. Not bad.
Did you
Not
taste
bad.
it? It's still so
Do
hot.
you feel like you need to add more whiskey to your whiskey?
I actually honestly I like it hot because it's like so hot it just kind of tastes like hot coffee. So I like it for that. Drink it hot.
Oh, I think
Burn your taste buds.
I think we can mention too that we've decided for our Love It or Leave It, we're going to be trying Jack Daniel's whiskey. Not me, but you guys. I'm gonna eat like an ice cream sandwich, maybe.
Oh, okay.
In my stand-in.
Yeah.
Review that next to
dipped in Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
To get the
Jack
full effect.
Daniels coffee.
Yeah.
And it's a side-by-side taste test.
Oh yeah, sorry. We're gonna be doing the Jack Daniels versus Uncle Nearest to see what
Yeah.
if they're
Which
the same.
one we prefer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
love it or leave it. Yeah. I'm
And
sure
I
we'll
do,
have both.
and I have some fun little facts about whiskey, Tennessee whiskey
Cool.
specifically.
Oh,
when we
great.
get to that,
Awesome.
that I'll talk about brewing. No, distilling.
Yeah.
Distilling. Awesome.
So the ground coffee, not, it was challenging.
I think
Challenging.
the smell of the olfactory reveal. I
Yeah.
think it smells kind of like alcohol, but it almost smells a little bit like an extract, like a
Sure.
like if
a
it were a
vanilla?
whiskey extract that you
Uh-huh.
would use in baking. That's
Yeah,
what
I
it
like
kind of
that.
reminds
That's
me of.
That's a good one.
It does have that alcohol smell to it, I think.
I think that from what I remember, and again, I don't know if my standards have, adjusted
Right.
since we started this podcast,
Your mind has been opened.
right?
You're no longer the coffee snob you used to be.
I enjoyed this more than I remember the Jim Beam.
Yeah, I remember not really caring for that Jim Beam.
Yeah.
I would say with the Jim Beam, it took a little bit more additives for me to get to a point where I could give it no bad reviews. This coffee seeming a little bit easier to no bad review.
Out the gate, right. As it's cooling, I'm getting a little bit more of that, sharp, artificial cherry flavor that everybody loves to use. So, but it's not bad, I guess.
I think there's a little bit of bitterness that I think is bothering me more than the flavor. Like the artificial flavor actually isn't bothering me too much. Is the bitterness coming from the coffee or from the flavoring?
I think it's coming from the flavoring.
I don't care for that.
Yeah.
But I'll try to be more positive because that's the feedback I've received from our listeners.
Well, I want to say one thing. This World of Coffee Company, it could be a little bit a little bit of an elevated experience right off the bat. They are a member of the Specialty Coffee Association of America,
Boom.
also the Specialty Foods Association of America, and they go to the Summer Fancy Foods Show.
They're fancy.
They represent at the Fancy Food Show as well. So
Okay.
they are, their thing is basically toll roasting, but meant to be a specialty coffee company.
Okay.
So, if we're
Like a
starting,
higher-end toll roaster.
if you're starting,
Good for them.
We're starting with a better base product before all this artificial flavoring goes in.
Yeah.
And
Right.
real Jack Daniels.
And real,
also.
I like that.
Right.
That is a touch that I really like.
So then it makes me wonder if they're more of a toll roaster. Is this something that Foreman Brown reached out to them and said, hey, we'd like to distribute a coffee? Now I'm curious. It doesn't seem like they're the type of company that just goes and licenses the names, because just looking on their website, they're like, we make a blend special for you. What do
Yeah.
you want us to do for
And
you?
the packaging,
Add your brand.
That packaging is on brand for Jack Daniels, whereas the Jim Beam just sort of really looked kind of like low quality,
Right.
oh, we downloaded their fucking logo and slapped it on the bag.
Right.
Whereas this one is a little bit more polished. It's all black. It's all on brand. So yeah, I think that they are. I think that they took the step up.
It makes sense that you'd have a better product if Jack Daniels reached out to the coffee company versus the a random coffee company looking for other flavorings.
Yeah.
It makes sense that it would be a better coffee.
Interesting.
So I think there's something positive to say if you're debating between the Jack Daniels coffee and the why can I never
Jim Beam?
The Jim Beam. Why is that name so
Right.
hard for me to remember?
Right.
I did that whole episode and I
Yeah.
cannot remember it ever.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell me, okay, so as a non-drinker, I don't really know, what alcohols are all about. Jack Daniels makes me think of, people, white men who are alcoholics and maybe living in poor places. I don't know who might possibly be abusive. I don't know if any of that's true. I would like if that to be dispelled.
I have an answer
What
for
is-
that.
Who is this alcohol for?
I drank Jack and Coke for the entirety of my early 20s drinking career.
Exactly the same here.
Yeah.
I have
Exactly
heard
the
of Jack
same.
and Coke as a drink when I used to
Yeah.
be a waitress.
I drank so much of that in my early 20s and probably late teens.
So are you saying it's for young people? It's
Yeah.
not my association is incorrect.
Yes.
I think,
yes.
okay.
You totally missed the mark.
Okay. That's what I'm just wondering. I don't know anything about alcohol. I don't know who's drinking alcohols.
Now, if you're asking who's drinking it, like straight out of the bottle,
Yeah. Is that
probably the character you described. But like how it's actually consumed in the market, I think is closer to just Jack and Coke and younger 20s crowd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When I came up in the time before Red Bull and vodka, you know, Jack and Coke was kind of, you got the caffeine from the Coke to help you.
Yeah.
And like Jack Daniels does, like the flavor goes really well with
Yeah,
Coke.
yeah.
I think.
And
I
a
don't
little
know.
squirt of lime too. Fuck,
Oh yeah,
count
sometimes
that
I
in.
had it with lime.
That's good.
Now that I'm like thinking about the cherry flavor in the coffee and thinking about Jack Daniels and Coke, like, is there a natural hint of like cherry Coke is so good? Does Jack and Coke kind of like give you a little bit of an impression of that flavor? Or is the cherry totally just part of the coffee? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But now I want to try Jack and Cherry Coke.
Oh.
Man, that would probably be so good.
Does anybody
With a lime too. Oh.
does anybody drink Jack on the Rocks? Like I know a lot of whiskey are neat or rocks.
I don't think it's a
water.
sipping whiskey. I don't.
It's
I
not
don't
a
know.
sipping whiskey
I
in
could
your
be
opinion.
wrong, but I don't know.
Well, you can just talk about your own experience.
No.
As you, as a person who drinks some whiskeys, are you a sipping? Is it
No, it's
to
too
you?
sweet. It's too sweet for me.
Is it sweet?
Yeah,
What? Okay.
it's a sweeter whiskey.
I don't know if I've ever. I mean, I guess I've probably done a shot of Jack Daniels, but I've never sipped Jack Daniels.
Okay.
Have you ever had Crown Royal?
Yes.
That's like the Canadian like version of Jack Daniels. In my opinion, it's like sweet, but not sweet like that, but kind of, you know, in the same neighborhood of like a sweeter alcohol.
Okay, we should scale this back and save the rest of this
My
conversation
bad.
for the Patreon
Okay.
Oh,
that we're
okay.
going to release.
Bringing it back to the coffee.
Yeah. Bring it. I just wanted to kind of get to
Sure.
what I was trying to get to with that question is like, who would the Jack Daniels company be marketing a specialty coffee to? Like, who would they want? Like, what segment of people are they looking for?
Maybe it was like an attempt to see, hey, can we capture some additional beverage dollars with our brand?
So you think maybe they started out like a year or so ago? I looked at the Best By date on that. It's January 2024.
Okay.
So it was either roasted a few months ago or it was roasted 2 years ago, because a lot of times these types of coffees have a 2-year Best By date. So maybe they tried doing a push in the beginning of 2022. Maybe it hasn't gone that well, so they've been phasing it out.
I feel like I saw Jack Daniels coffee on shelves ages ago, though. I don't think they've just been making it for a year.
Oh, okay.
But I do feel like it's maybe just sort of a novelty product.
Yeah.
More
Right.
than something people are actually drinking every day.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like somebody's like sees it and they're like, I'm gonna try it spontaneously, impulsively. They're like, it's not bad, but then like never drink it again.
Right.
It feels
Right.
like somebody would buy it for like their dad who likes Jack Daniels.
Right.
Yeah,
And like give it to him as like a Christmas gift.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Like a novelty thing. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm sure it does all right on that too. It's like, I mean, the great packaging. If you're a Jack Daniels fan, I mean, you know, I could see it being popular on Father's Day. Like, I don't know if
Oh, that's a good idea.
He likes Jack, but I'm 4.
Well, in the packaging they have at World Market, it comes in a nice little canister, like a tin type thing.
Oh, there you
So
go.
it's actually a really nice gift packaging.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, does anyone ever buy anything for themselves at World Market? It
Right.
seems like the place you go when you have to buy a gift for someone and you don't know what to get.
Right.
I know.
I mean, I like World Market. It's fun. I go there every year before Christmas.
There you
Ah, smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do have some really interesting coffee brewing equipment
Oh.
there. Yeah, so when we were doing wedding catering, we bought our pour overs from there. Really, these like cool like lab chemistry looking stand things.
Ah, cool.
So as much as I wanted to like dive into this Uncle Nearest, no,
We should save it for the comparison.
I honestly don't think that I need it. I really think it's not bad black.
I finished up my cup.
I know.
I mean, maybe just because it's a tiny cup, I'm pro these tiny cups. Let me
Ah,
tell ya.
right.
This is the way to go
good.
from now on.
Challenge coffees, but I drink mine too.
Yeah.
I could rinse out the cup with a little Uncle Nearest. I didn't need it. No.
You should save it.
Okay.
I found that I did not get up to do this because I didn't feel like it was so much so that I had to. But I think I would prefer it with a little tiny bit of sugar and a bit of milk. That's how my no bad review on this coffee is.
And so for all of you new listeners, Jack Daniels fans that have just joined us, we have a rating scale where if we drink it black, that's our highest rating that we give it. And then if we can't say it's not bad black, then we add cream or sugar. And if it still needs a little bit of help, we add whiskey. And then we will drink it. We are committed to drinking it until it tastes good. Today, we didn't have to work too hard. So I think that's three not bad reviews black. Good job.
I'm pretty
Good
impressed
job.
for the quality of
Yeah.
a flavored coffee, like what it is, and especially compared to the Jim Beam. Yeah, I'm impressed.
Right.
If there had been whipped cream on the table, I would have used it.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
I got through it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, is that our episode then, guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my God, that went so smoothly.
Yeah.
You guys
Well,
ready to get to
I
drinking?
think
That's why it went smoothly.
the
We
party's
can't
about
wait.
to really continue
Let's talk.
on.
More
And,
drinking.
And join us on Patreon to find out about the showdown between Uncle Nearest and
No.
Jack Daniels. And then if you're lucky, we might release it as a bonus episode.
Wink.
Thank you for listening to this podcast, generously sponsored by Modest Coffee, purveyors of single origin coffee without the snobbery. Visit www.modest.coffee/no bad reviews to see what they're roasting today. Enjoy.